Welcome back to another series of interviews. And for those of you who are joining me for the first time, I invite you to listen to the introductory video I made about the context and intention that I have behind this series. And today I have the honor and privilege to have Dr. Philip Rand, a program leader for the Landmark Worldwide, known for the human potential and training. And then the whole context of this interview is about self-mastery and the body-mind-spirit connection and union. So Philip, first, thank you so much for being with me and give me your time and your wisdom. And I know it's late where you are in Florida, but so thank you so much for giving me your time. So talking about the self-mastery, and I know you are the master of the conversation and distinctions, leading many programs. What's that for you when we say self-mastery? So we are not trusting anybody else. We are not relying on any other sources beside ourselves. So what's the self-mastery for you?
Well, I think there's two different things to distinguish and talk about. And, looking at from the perspective of the world of the distinctions from the Landmark Forum, first of all, you got to deal with the self. Oftentimes when someone says myself, they're referring to some identity or some quality that's personal to a human being. And at Landmark, when we talk about the self, we're talking about who we are as an invention, as what I'm going to say, as a possibility, something that is bigger or goes beyond the limits of who we wound up being in life. So I think that's the first part that's critical in the conversation. The second, which is why I've been participating at Landmark for over 19 years, which is then there's the world of mastery. And for many people, mastery is a place to get to. It's something to arrive at. It's like a mountain you've summited. And, what I love about participating at Landmark is mastery is not something to get to. It's a place to come from. And for me, it's not when I'm freed up that it's some place I need to get to, then I really have the opportunity to create, well, what am I going to practice today? What am I going to invent today? What am I going to bring in existence as a creation, as a way to, master this thing called myself? So, and, the only thing I think that's the only other thing I think it's useful to say is a lot of time mastery, when you've mastered something, it seems really easy for that person. But what people don't see is the day in and day out and the moment by moment practicing that makes it seem like it's easy. I mean, there's a lot of things I can do today that are just natural for me to do. But a year ago, it was, moment by moment, hour by hour, okay, I'm going to practice this. I'm really going to deal with myself about this. I'm really going to put myself at issue regarding this. So that's, I think, the first thing I really invite people to look at are just what are those two terms and how can you interact with those two terms that would give you power in life.
Yes. The self that we refer to or just the identity that we go for the daily life.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I know you, Landmark has with great honor. I was, practicing, leading many programs for over 14 years. And I know Landmark is just like great in all aspects for the distinctions. Like when we know something, we can distinguish, and then there is no complexity in that. It's just like so clear. So if you want to choose one distinction to talk about it, what would be? Because I have my own, so what's your...
Well, I think, there's, like you said, there's a lot of distinctions or conversations. In fact, in the Landmark Forum, there's over 50 different conversations that people look at. But for this topic, I think probably the most powerful distinction that applies to self-mastery is something called the already, always way of listening. Now, if you just look at those two words, already, which means, before, and always, this is my favorite definition, always means never not. And in the forum, we invite people to consider that as human beings, we go through life, and instead of interacting with life, we interact with what that little voice in our head is saying about life. And if I stop talking just even for a minute, you could start to get present and you could start to notice that little voice in your head. And for some of you, the little voice said, what little voice is he talking about? What do you mean a little voice in my head? That's kind of weird. I don't think I have a little voice in my head. Well, that's the little voice in your head I'm talking about. And oftentimes, for me, for sure, one of the things that I was so knocked back by when I first participated in the Landmark Forum was just how much I thought I was that little voice in my head. Mm-hmm. I thought that was me talking. And growing up, I started swimming competitively when I was 10. So I swam from the time I was 10 till I was 24, all the way through college. And so much of my life was spent going back and forth in the pool. And, there was a lot of time to listen to that little voice in my head. And I really did think that was me. I remember the forum leader saying this one thing to me, which I never got over, which is, if that's you, then stop it. If that little voice in your head is you, then stop it. And it was like, what? And it was really the first time I started to separate myself from that little voice. And it went from being something I thought I was to something I had. And I really, I started to, I didn't go along with it. I checked it out. I mean, there was all the times it woke me up in the middle of the night and started talking about what I should have done and how that should have gone and why didn't I do this and why did I do that. I mean, have you ever had that experience? You're in a conversation and then it ends and 15 minutes later you're like, why didn't I say that? It's like you come up with the perfect thing.
Yes.
Human beings, we all have that, that experience. And, I really did discover for myself, I had no dominion over that little voice. Just none. It was, and when I really started to discover I had as much dominion over that little voice in my head as I do as this fingernail growing, there was real freedom in that. And just to tie that back to what I said earlier about mastery isn't a place to get to, it really is a place to come from and a place to practice. You could spend the rest of your life practicing and really discovering for yourself you are not that little voice in your head. And the world that opens up from that practice and that discovery. And there's one last thing I'll share about it, which is, I think it's pretty funny. I was with one of the senior leaders at Landmark, and we were happening to be leading an event, and they were creating, for the people that had never done the forum, this whole conversation about the already always way of listening of human being. And while she was creating this conversation, all of a sudden there was this thought, I could do this so much better. Why is she doing this? The way I do it makes so much more sense. It really connects. These people are not getting what she's saying. Oh my God, I cannot believe she's doing this. And all of a sudden there was a moment when I just started laughing, I'm like, wow, I have been already always listening about how this program leader is creating the already always listening. And it was just like in that moment, I got the absurdity of my life. It was like I snapped out of it and I got to be with people. So that's probably, you know, for the people that are going to be watching this video and people that are interested in finding out more about Landmark, I think that one thing, if you can just get, wow, how you listen and interact with life, the difference in it, the way it colors and shapes and skews your view of how you see yourself and others in life, it's probably, like you said, my favorite distinction.
Yes. Already have a judgment about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And while you were talking about it, you know, I
Yeah.
noticed that my thoughts are, oh, the first time that I hear, or for me,
Yeah.
it's so powerful that, you know, the gap that is larger between the voice and who I am. So I just dropped it. I said, I want to listen to Philip. But the voice is just like going and going and going. And as you said, it's just like, if it's not me, I could stop it. So
Yeah.
that was great.
Yeah, and Nisheen, I think what you said is really powerful. See, if you get it's not you, then you have a choice.
Mhm.
I think what you create is really powerful, and I just don't want it to go by people, is if you get that's not you, then you have a choice. You know, Nisheen in a moment chose, oh, I'm going to listen to Philip. And that's power.
Yes. And the more I practice it, the more I'm good at it. So I have like, it doesn't go for hours until I find out, oh, it's just like affecting me and my interaction daily. So it's just like, as you said, snap it and said, okay, thank you. And then just be present for what's going on. Yes, that's
awesome.
Thank you so much. And then I'm going to have one more question, or I would love you to speak to it. It's, you know, we hear the shift is happening and transformation is happening. So what is the transformation for you when we talk about the transformation in general?
Yeah, well, I'm going to talk about it the way, it really gets to the heart about what the Landmark Forum is about, which is addressing what it means to be a human being for human being. So in the forum, when we say a transformation, we really do mean a transformation in what it means to be a human being for human being. And throughout the history of human being, there's been these transformations. There was a time when what it meant to be a human being, where some human beings weren't actually human beings. They were subhuman. And inside of that construct, or inside of that context, it justified slavery. And, it's really hard for us to get this, but there was a time when what it meant to be a human being was that you didn't have a say about your life. That there was some king or some person who had some anointment from somebody, and you did what they told you. If they said you're a farmer, you were a farmer. If they said you're a knight, you were a knight. And if you said you were this and you were that. And human beings really lived what I would call an other-determined life. And then there was a transformation. You and I, we don't live another determined life. That's why I said it's really hard for us to get it. In fact, we're really proud of our self-determined life. But the only reason why you have access to that is because there was a transformation in what it means to be a human being. And maybe if you listen to the news, or if you listen to how people are interacting with each other, maybe that what it currently means to be a human being is an us versus them. Maybe that's starting to get bankrupt. Maybe that there's me over here and a you over there. Maybe that's starting to get bankrupt. Or maybe what it means to be a human being is to be right. And if you're right, for sure, that makes other people wrong. And maybe that's starting to get bankrupt. And there really is this possibility of a transformation in what it means to be a human being, but not for me and not for you, but for human being. And inside of that transformation, new possibilities will show up, new ways to be will show up, new ways to act will show up. And so if that's what you're, talking about, I think it's definitely happening. I mean, there's a lot of interest in that. In fact, there's a book on Amazon right now. It's called Speaking Being. It's literally a transcript of the person who created this methodology, Werner Erhard, of leading the Landmark Forum in 1984. And right now, it's the #1 best-selling philosophy book on Amazon. There's an interest in this, there's a demand for it, and I think it's super, super, super exciting.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much. For sure, there is a demand because I work with so many people and I can see the struggle and the old ways of being. It's not working. Literally, it's not working. So definitely.
The other way you could talk about it too is so many people collapse themselves with a human doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they're disconnected from being a human being.
Yes. That's a great foundation.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Philip. Anything else you would like to add to it? Because I can talk to you hours and hours and hours.
No, it was awesome. If anyone has any more questions, invite them to go check out the Landmark website at landmarkworldwide.com. And just really thank you for the opportunity to participate in the conversation. I, just love you. I love being with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I miss you so much. And I love you. And I just so grateful for this time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good
You're welcome.
Bye.
Good evening.